Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Tackle Talk Live. We are very fortunate today to have Steve Carson from Penn University here to talk about all sorts of stuff. And we're just lucky that Steve's available to help us out with this, and we're looking forward to a great hour of questions and info that'll help you out for this up and coming season. Steve, thank you very much for coming.
Art, thank you so much. And socially distanced greetings. Those of you that are out there live, you know what this is all about. Hopefully those of you that are watching this on YouTube in July or August, right now it's January. If you're watching this in July or August, all this will be over with and it'll just be in our rear view mirrors. But we are very excited. We're getting ready for another fantastic fishing season. The last couple of years have been great, and just when you think it can't get any better, it gets better. And it used to be that you could go out on just about any trip out of San Diego, up to about maybe a 4-day trip, and you would, if you had 2 rods, it was enough. If you picked the right 2 for that particular trip, you were going to be fine. And the fishing has just gotten better and better, more species available, bigger individuals of the species we already had. Fishing rods are like golf clubs. There's just really no such thing as one that does everything. It just can't happen. Fishing rods, each one does a fairly specific job. There will be a little bit of bleed over on one side, a little bit of bleed over on the other side, but they really do what they do. And it doesn't matter how good of a driver you have when you need a putter. So I've kind of distilled it down to the 5 combos, rod and reel combos, that you don't leave the dock without them. Because I've actually tested it a couple of times, and I've not brought one of them, and sure enough, that would be the one that I wish that I had. And so you're covering a wide variety of species, a wide variety of fish sizes, and I know what you guys out there are like, all you searcher anglers. So I'm going to start on the low end, the lightest stuff. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to work our way up towards the heavier, the bigger bluefin tuna, the bigger yellowfin tuna gear. And I'm sure that Callie and Celia will be reading me the questions, but I know that if I started out with the heavy stuff, I'd never get to the light stuff. So, and then also, and you guys have to be nice, Callie and Celia are going to be deciding who wins. I've got the nice Fathom 40 star drag reel. It's a single speed reel. Sorry, that's what I had. But one of you out there in searcher land is going to win that, and I don't pick. I may end up drawing the number, but I'm not going to be the one that decides it. Anyway, we're going to go through those 5 rod and reel combos that you do not leave the dock without, because it's a big ocean out there, and you do not know what's going to be happening till you get there. So, and obviously post your questions up on the feed, and we'll do our best to answer them. So we're going to start out with the lightest one, and that's what I call the 20-25 pound rig, aka the finesse live bait rig. And that's normally going to be a star drag reel. You don't need a 2-speed reel in this line category. This one happens to be the Penn Fathom number 15 star drag. The way I like to set the line system up is it's filled up about 3/4 of the way with braid, and then the top shot is going to be 25 to 50 yards. I know I've seen some of Art's videos that he's done recently, and Art, you tend to like about a 100-foot top shot.
Yeah.
So that I guess is 33 1/3 yards, but
exactly. So
somewhere between 25 and 50 yards. After you fish for a while, you're going to come up with your own particular preference on that. But that's kind of the way I like to set it up. And lots of times, it happened several times last summer, and I mean for a couple of week period, and the summers before, the fish just get finicky. They're not that interested in biting. Maybe the bait is not particularly big, and you have to present that live sardine on 20-pound test. Now, you're not going to catch a 100-pound tuna on 20-pound test. We realize that. But a lot of times it's 20, 25, 30, 40 pound tuna, and they won't bite anything heavier than 20-pound test. you better make sure that you've got a reel with a good drag, that it's properly adjusted. Check with the crew to make sure that you've got your drag set properly. Another thing that when you're fishing that finesse type rig, you're going to be using a relatively small hook. And that is, I don't know if that'll even show up on camera. I guess you guys at home can decide if you can see that. That's an Owner Gorilla Light in a size 2. If you can't see the hook, neither can the fish. That's kind of the point. So this is the type of rig that you're going to use when you just want to get a bite. If the fish are over 50 pounds, Art will remind you, don't throw this out there. But when they're 25, 30 pounds and they're just being fish don't really need a reason not to bite. They have their own reasons. This is a rig that you're going to use a lot. And as far as the rod goes, I like 8-foot rods. Some people like 7. Occasionally there's people that like 9. You want to make sure that you have a rod that you can also cast the bait out a little ways away from the boat. I like to get an 8-foot rod that's rated, and really any rod that you use, you want to use as close to the middle of the line rating as you possibly can get. So if you're going to use 20 or 25 pound test line, you want to get a rod that's rated something like 12 to 30 pound, something like that. And that will give you the best combination of power and finesse. You also don't, when you're using a small hook like that, if you use a rod tip that's too heavy, you're going to rip that. I did catch a couple of bluefin last year on this, over 40 pounds. It's not going to happen quickly. Art, as Art I'm sure can attest, he's watched people probably battling for an hour, and as long as there's fish around the boat, Art's not going to be too upset about it. But again, when the bigger fish are around, that's not what this is for. But for some reason, the last couple of years, from maybe the last week of August to the last week of September, this has just been the type of rig that you want to make sure that you have. And sure enough, I can remember at least one trip that I went on, not last year, but 2 years ago. I didn't bring these because I was going to catch nothing but 100-pound tuna. Wrong. You know, they were 35 pounds, and they were not biting one thing heavier than 25-pound test. And really 20 was better. So again,
what about fluorocarbon, Steve?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know if this is going to show up or not because it's pretty small. But right about there, you'll see I've got a little knot there. That's where I've attached. I usually go with about 4 feet of fluorocarbon, and Art has definitely reminded me enough times that I don't forget anymore. You want to make sure that you make your fluorocarbon length short enough or long enough so that when you're casting your bait, that the knot is not in the tip of the rod. And so that's going to vary a little bit based on your style of casting and how long the rod is. For me, it's about 4 feet. For me, it's about 4 feet. For some of you, especially if you use a shorter rod, a 7-foot rod, you might only do that with 3 feet. But you do not want that knot to go inside the rod tip when you're casting. That's I'm glad you brought that up because that knot is so small, I actually didn't notice it. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Art. That was an important point that I wanted to bring up. And that applies to pretty much any time you're fishing with live bait. I like to have the length of fluorocarbon, the maximum length that I can still cast comfortably with the knot outside the rod tip. With a 9-foot rod, a lot of times that's 5 feet. But again, you at home will have to work that out on your own as far as what the ideal length is.
We've been asked what kind of knot you use.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, on the knot to the hook, I pretty much always use a single San Diego, and you'll love this one, Art. I learned the single San Diego, I think in 1973 on the Searcher. Kenny taught it to me.
How about that?
So there's a little history.
Yeah.
And then this is the other knot that's a really common question, which is your monofilament to your fluorocarbon. I like to use the surgeon's knot. Oh, and by the way, Art's done some really good videos previously with knots, so you can look those up on the Searcher channel, or you can check on YouTube. But I like to use a surgeon's knot with 4 turns. If you look in the knot books, a lot of times they'll show you the surgeon's knot with 2 or maybe only 3 turns, and that's fine for smaller fish. when you're trying to figure out how to catch a 40-pound bluefin tuna on 20-pound test line, go with the 4 turns. And as with all knots, lots and lots of spit is going to make sure that that knot seats down tightly. If your knot did not seat down tightly, cut it and retie. If those of you that have been out on my trips, on my Penn Fishing University trips on the Searcher, you've seen me lots of times tying a knot, tying on a hook, tying on a lure, looking at it, going, nope, don't like that, and cutting it off and retying it. You cannot let a subpar knot go out in the water, because sure enough, the biggest fish of the trip, maybe the biggest fish of your life, that's when it's going to bite. And speaking of Penn Fishing University, those of you that want to converse with me more, please go, see if I can show this to the camera, on Facebook, Penn Fishing University. Please give it a like and a follow. I try to keep my personal Facebook page to anybody that could have attended my high school reunion. So my fishing friends, please go to Penn Fishing University, give it a like, give it a follow, and you can ask me questions there. So that's combo number 1. And I'm sure you guys will have some questions about that, but we're going to put that aside for a moment.
We have a question. Do you prefer underhand casting with bait or overhand?
Do I prefer, for myself, I prefer underhand casting. It takes a little bit more timing. You have to be a little bit more careful in doing it, but as long as you can get the bait, and you don't have to set a world record casting distance with a live bait. It's far more important that you let that bait land gently on the water and swim away on its own to get the distance from the boat. But for some people, just to get any sort of distance they need to cast overhand, that's okay too. But personally, I prefer underhand. Yes?
For 15 to 20 pound test fishing, is it better to keep your braid as light as possible, like 30-pound test, to create less drag for a sardine swimming through the water? Or does fishing 50-pound braid on a setup like that have no difference?
I guess that would be yes, I like the lighter braid. Generally, I don't like to have light tests together, so if I've got 20-pound test top shot, I don't like to have 20-pound braid. I like to have the braid be whatever line class I'm using. I like to have the braid be sort of one bump above whatever the top shot is. So yes, I do like the lighter braid. I think that answers the question. Okay.
Down the road, maybe talk about left-handed left-handed fathoms that might be available.
Okay, left-handed fathoms. Please check the Penn Fishing website, and they'll have specs on all the different models that are left-handed. In the star drag models, in the Fathom with no level wind, there are no lefties. I'll tell you ahead of time. With the 2-speed versions, which we're about to discuss, there are some lefties, and I will mention exactly which ones they are. We used to think it was only 7 or 8% of people were left-handed, but apparently it's more like 13, 14% of the people are left-handed, so it's becoming more relevant. One of our very good friends, Captain Buzz Brizendine, who's left-handed, every time somebody asks him about left-handed reels, he says, just learn to fish with a right-handed reel. So, I'm not left-handed. I will help you where I can.
I have a standing joke with a longtime customer that has left-handed reels, and he comes on the boat, and when he's on day 1 when he starts to fish, I say, Mr. Guy, your reel's on backwards. And so that starts the trip off. It's kind of tradition. It's an inside joke with he and I, but that's something, with left-handed reels, is that sometimes people make that error. They put their right-handed reel on backwards, and then
it can be embarrassing
on the left-hand side, and it's backwards. So anyway, that's just been, for over 30 years, Hal Guy has been coming on the Searcher, and he has left-handed reels.
I can't say that I've never made that mistake myself. So, okay, so now things are getting fun. Now the tuna are getting bigger, so to speak. And this is still a finesse outfit. this is a really crucial one, especially the last couple of years. Quite often in the late summer, there's lots and lots of boats going out. The bait boats are working really, really hard to keep the bait supply up. And sometimes the bait is just not that good. Either it's not very lively or it's not very big. And all of a sudden the fish are getting bigger. They're not 25, 30 pounds. They're 50, they're 60, they're 70 pounds, but they're still very, very finicky. And they just won't, you wish they would bite on your 60-pound test, but they won't bite it. You wish they would, but they won't. This is your 30-pound rig. And in answer, sort of going backward in answer to that question, I prefer the Penn Fathom 2-speed, the regular number 15. It's a little bit lighter. It's got a lighter spool, so that when I'm trying to get that small bait out there, it will do that a little bit more easily. But it does come in the extra narrow version. I don't know if I can show that to the camera or not. The 15 extra narrow. So it's a little taller and a little narrower. And that does come in a left-handed version, in a 2-speed. So maybe you're just a right-handed person that prefers to crank left-handed. And also, something that Art will like to hear, because it's got a bigger side plate, the 15 extra narrow has bigger gears and a bigger drag surface, even though the line capacity is identical between these two reels. I like this one. I like the smaller one because the spool's a little bit lighter. And all you 25-year-old professional athletes out there, of which I am definitely not one, I can hear you through the internet saying, you don't need a 2-speed reel for 30-pound test. That's crazy. Wrong. Because even if you're a 25-year-old professional athlete, even if you're taking steroids, okay, when you hook that 50 or 60 or 70-pound bluefin tuna on 30-pound test, what do you have to do? You have to lift up, you have to wind down. You have to lift up, you have to wind down. Now, yes, granted, I would get very tired doing that and you wouldn't, but every time you lift up on that tuna, okay, you lift him up, here he comes. Then when you wind down, he gets to point his nose down, he swims down a little bit. Now, you literally doubled the amount of time that you have to fight that fish. With a 2-speed reel, or as I can't remember what store it is, it says push the easy button. You push the easy button, it's like that. Now you're in low, and literally, once that tuna is done running, you just wind. You just wind slowly. You just wind. You're not lifting up, you're not pumping down, you're just winding. So that instead of the tuna's nose going up and then going down, and he swims a little bit, and he does that over and over and over, you get his nose pointed up, and he just literally, as he's circling, he's corkscrewing himself right to the surface. Now, that's why you want to have a 2-speed reel in 30-pound test. Now, those of you that are old enough to remember albacore, when we used to use a lot of 30-pound tests for live bait for albacore, obviously you don't need a 2-speed reel for them. You know, a 30, 35 pounder is a pretty big one, and you wouldn't need it. But these days, both the yellowfin and the bluefin, you can be out there, and it's very, very tough to get a bite. And speaking of which, I was going to show you guys this, and pull this back. There's that knot with the fluorocarbon again at about 4 feet, 4-turn surgeon's knot. I will be amazed if this shows up on camera. You sort of have to take my word for it. There's a 4-turn surgeon's knot there. And then on the end, now this, once you get to this class, now I'm up into circle hooks, and that is a number 4 owner Mutu circle hook. Because when you're hooking that 50, 60 pound bluefin or yellowfin tuna, that bite's going to take a while. And once tuna get over about 50 pounds, they don't have teeth like a shark or a wahoo, but they have teeth. And they will chew through your line. If you're in a half hour or longer fight, they're going to chew through your line. So what the circle hook does is it comes right to the corner of their mouth, and that way, again, you can hold on to them. They don't bite through your line through the period of the fight. So with this rig, that number 4 owner Mutu hook has just proven to be, and Art hates it when I tell people stuff like this, but I've caught tuna up to 95 pounds on this exact rig with that hook. Now, not that I recommend it. Those late summer bites where the 50, 60 pounders are only biting the light line, this is going to be the rig you want. Also, if you're on a little bit longer trip, I love this rig. I don't have it rigged up this way, with about a 2-foot wire leader, light wire leader, and I use this for live bait fishing for wahoo. So this will do a lot of stuff for you. So we have some questions.
Do ringed hooks versus non-ringed hooks matter?
If you would have asked me that 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely ring hooks are better. I still generally like ring hooks, but I would rather have the exact style and the exact model of hook, whatever it is I want for that style of fishing. And this particular hook doesn't come in a ringed version in this size yet. However, especially last year, a little bit the year before, and especially in 2020, 2020 was just the non-standard year for everything. I don't want to get the world started on the year 2020, but even there were a couple of times when even that extra amount of metal that a ring added, and it wasn't a lot of extra metal, but it was enough extra metal that in some cases it spooked the fish a little bit. So in this particular rig, and like I said, I love this hook. So, and it doesn't come in a ring version, and I've done extremely, extremely well because it's a small hook. When you, we'll use Mickey the Mackerel here. He's a popular guy. Generally with this, I'm going to be doing what's called shoulder hooking, which is kind of up there on the, if a fish had a neck, it would be in the nape of the neck. And this hook will just kind of get lost next to a sardine. And even a finicky tuna doesn't see it very well. So I guess I was kind of a wishy-washy answer on whether or not I like ringed hooks, and I guess I'll say I sometimes like ringed hooks.
Well,
was that wishy-washy enough?
No, it's perfect.
Okay.
How do you prefer, nose hook, shoulder hook, or butt hook?
Oh, well, whatever I prefer is irrelevant. What do the fish prefer? And the fish have the final vote, and the fish change their vote. Not only day to day, but sometimes hour to hour. Generally, and this is just how you start. If you're fishing bluefin and they're kind of way away from the boat, breaking, but they're boiling, 100, 150, 200 yards away from the boat or more, and you got to get your bait out there. Then what they call shoulder hooking. That's again right there in the nape of the neck. If a fish had a neck, I like to use that because now that bait is aimed away from the boat. The hook kind of folds down like that, and that bait, even if he's not too big, he can really pull. He can really pull and get your bait, get the maximum distance from the boat. Also, and why fish do this, I cannot begin to explain. Why ask why? They just do. Sometimes after you've let your bait swim 150 yards away from the boat, you then decide you're going to wind him in. So you wind him in slowly. You're literally, now he comes back at the boat, and he's like this, and you're slow trolling him back to the boat. And sometimes the tuna, that's how they want it. I don't know why, they just do. So that's one way that I like to use it. Anytime you're using a sinker, and I didn't, and we're going to talk more about sinker rigs later, but anytime I'm using a sinker, then you've got to do either one of these two styles, which is sideways across the bridge of the nose or up through the nose. Any sort of sinker, whether it's a small sinker, a big sinker, or a slip sinker. Art loves slip sinkers. That's going to be the way you want to do it. Sometimes the fish, if they're up kind of close to the boat, or sometimes they're even kind of hiding under the boat, kind of watch, they're like this, they're watching for the baits. And what they're doing is when the bait hits the water and swims down and away, they pounce on it quickly. So if you're noticing that people are putting their bait in the water and they're hooking up within 10, 15 seconds of their bait hitting the water, that's the preference that the fish are showing. Now I like to use, and I don't hook them back towards the tail so much. Sardines have, and I don't really have a sardine here, sorry. Right about here, they've got two little fins in the middle of their chest, and there's a bone right here, just like the wishbone on a chicken or on a turkey, and they have the same bone right there. So right about here, I'm going to go crossways there, and then when I don't even hardly have to cast it. I'll just kind of flip it out about 10 feet from the boat, and as soon as that bait hits the water, when it's hooked like this, he dives down and he's swimming away as fast as he can. And when the fish are in that ambush mode, boom, you're going to get a bite within a few seconds. The disadvantage is that the bait will die quite a bit quicker. He might live 10 or 15 minutes hooked like this. He'll live about 3 minutes hooked like this, and then as soon as you start to reel him in, the hook just tears out anyway. So I think that answered the question.
Mm-hmm. Fly line, hook bait, or drop rig?
Oh, okay, well, there's dropper loop, then that's more of a yellowtail thing. We're going to talk about that later. The sinker rig is also usually fished on something a little bit heavier than this. We're going to get to that too. So these first two rigs that we talked about, I would say for tuna, not albacore, but tuna, 95% of the time there's no sinker. Sometimes with albacore, and again, you older anglers out there, you remember what albacore are. I used to love to use a large split shot, but until the albacore come back and I can see them, I'm not going by rumors. I want to see the albacore. Then we'll talk about that. Did that answer it?
What is a slip sinker?
What is a slip sinker? And of course I didn't bring one. It's an egg.
Sliding.
It's a sliding sinker. It's egg shaped with a hole in the middle. So you put your line through it, and it slides up and down on the line. And that can be a ½ an ounce, and it could be 3 or 4 ounces, just adapted to the conditions at hand.
What do you look for at the bait tank when you're grabbing a fresh one?
Oh boy, we could do a whole hour on that, but we're not going to. But sometimes you'll hear me when we're out on the boat or at the Fred Hall show or whatnot. Bait selection, bait selection, bait selection, and everything that we've been talking about is to maximize the presentation of the bait, because a lot of people grew up freshwater fishing where freshwater fish, bass and whatnot, they're ambush predators. They want a wounded bait or a bleeding bait or a dying bait. That's how they feed. Open ocean fish like tuna, they rely on speed. I'm almost convinced that they're a little bit like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. They can barely even see the bait if it's not moving. So you're looking in the bait tank, and there's 100 sardines swimming around and around in a circle like that, and you look at them, and you're just a human. They all look the same to you. They do not all look the same to the fish. So you just kind of take a step back, and it's better to do this before the fish are actually biting. Sort of practice. Check with one of the crew for some tips, but you're looking for usually a sardine that's maybe a little bit lighter color. That usually means that it's a little bit healthier. It's not missing any scales. Sometimes, when the bait boat catches the sardines, it's not an easy process, and they'll lose scales, so they'll have little missing scales or even a red mark where the scale is gone, or they'll have a red nose from bumping into the side of the bait tank, or even if they've been in the bait tank, if you're on a 5 or 6 or 7 day trip and the bait's just been in the bait tank for a long time, it'll be just like an aquarium fish. It'll start to get kind of some fungus growing on the fins and whatnot. Those baits are not going to be very lively, and that's for fish like lingcod and sand bass and stuff like that, where they're down there on the bottom. They're an ambush predator too. But an open ocean predator like a tuna or a wahoo or something like that, he wants to chase something. He wants something to try to run away from him, and he's going to chase it down and eat it. So if you don't have a good lively bait, you're not going to get a bite. Also, now I'm right-handed. I'm going to show this. It takes a little bit of practice. Learn to catch your bait with your left hand. So you've got the hook already in your right hand ready to go. Learn to catch the bait with your left hand. Even though you're mad at the bait, don't take your anger out on the bait. If you've got sardine scales in your hand, you squeezed it too hard. So learn to cup the bait like that gently, and then that way with your right hand, you're ready to go. Pin the hook into the bait and get it into the water. I like to have maybe a little count of maybe no more than 15 seconds, and 10 is better, between the time the bait leaves the water from the bait tank and ends up in the water outside the boat. Because what is bait? It's just a fish, and when fish are out of water, they start to die. The least amount of time that you can take from the bait tank into the water is going to be better for you. Again, I hope that answered the question. All right, we're going to keep moving. We're moving on. All you that are out there, when's he going to talk about big tuna? I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Yeah,
about that.
see, I told you that would happen. All right, now, whoa, here we are. Now, if Santa Claus is only going to buy you one rod, what's coming up? Valentine's Day is coming up. If your Valentine is only going to buy you one rod, this is going to be the one that it should be. This is your 40-pound rig. This is the one that does the most number of different things, whether you're just going out on an overnight trip or a day-and-a-half trip, staying fairly close to San Diego, or even if you're all the way down on, with Art on a 7-day trip down to Alejos Rocks or the Ridge or someplace like that, and everywhere in between. At the end of the year, you will have caught the most number of fish on your 40-pound rig. It's not always perfect, but you better have it where you know where it is. And this is, and just for giggles and grins, I broke out the Penn Torque 25 narrow. I know that a lot of you prefer the price of the Fathom, and I don't blame you, but the Torque is just a phenomenal series of reels. They come in the same sizes as the Fathoms. Unfortunately, no lefties. Sorry, in the Torque, no lefties. But that 25 narrow size is just hard to beat. I put about, on this one, I'll put about 400 yards of 65-pound braid on this. And that's a lot of line. And then I'll put about a 25-yard top shot of 40-pound monofilament on top of that. I can catch tuna. In fact, way back, I think it was 2010, this reel wasn't even out. I had the only model that existed on Earth. I had the field test model, and I caught 102-pound tuna on the Searcher. The very first 100-pound tuna ever caught on one of these reels was caught on the Searcher. I think Kenny gaffed it too. So this is just really a useful thing. I like about an 8-foot rod most of the time. If I'm going to use 40-pound test, I'm going to use a rod that's rated something like 25 to 50, 30 to 60, somewhere in there. I always want my line to be as close to the middle of the rod's line rating as possible. If you go to a shorter rod, like a 7-footer, it does give you a little more power. Sometimes I'll get daring and I'll use this with a 9-foot rod. That's a long rod. That takes a little bit more handling. But most of the time I'm going to use this with an 8-footer. And a lot of times I'll use it with, that's a number 2 owner Mutu hook. I don't know if that'll even show up. Let's see. Does that help? Ooh, look at that. I should have thought of started that earlier. I'll use this with 4 feet of 40-pound fluorocarbon, and I'll fish for 60, 70, 80, 90, up to 100-pound tuna. And there's a little story involved in that. I don't usually tell big one that got away stories, but we'll get to that. And also, this is probably my favorite rig for using for live bait for wahoo when you're on those longer 7-day and 8-day trips in the fall when Art gets down there where the wahoo are. And sometimes wahoo are like any other fish. They're not going to bite a lure. They only want to bite a live bait. You better make sure that you've got a rig that can handle them. Now, another thing that was super hot last year that the 40-pound rig is perfect for is what are called dart jigs. And I'm going to try to show these to the camera. I don't know how successful I'm going to be. I'm going to try. And these are pretty small jigs. These particular ones happen to be my favorites, which are the Williamson Gomame. I'm sure I'm hacking that pronunciation. And they come in a couple of different sizes. They come in like a 1 3/4, a 2 3/4, and a 3.5 ounce size. And what this is imitating, again, how many times has Art been out there? And you got huge schools of tuna, and they're eating bait this big. And if you try to make them eat a big old sardine or a big old mackerel, they're not going to do it. They are locked on to biting a small bait, and that's all they're going to bite. So you have to give them what they want. You can see that actually, well, that one's got some bite marks on it. That's probably my favorite size, mainly because it casts the easiest and sinks the deepest the fastest. And I always take these lures and I upgrade the hooks. Those are owner ST66 treble hooks. Again, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a lot thicker wire than these lures. These lures I think are made for smaller fish, so the hooks they come with are not that strong. I always do retrofit them to the heavier hooks. And sometimes you'll be out there and it's literally 60-pound tuna biting that little tiny, what does that say? 1.2 ounce jig, because that's what they're eating. And again, I don't ordinarily like to tell big one that got away stories. I like to tell big one that I caught stories. But on that exact Williamson Gomame in the purple, that's a really good color. I mean, that is a really good color. And this everything's the same. This reel, this rod, everything. That color I hooked last, what month was it? I think it was November, might have been October. I hooked a 200-pound tuna on this, right in the middle of a school of 30-pounders. I hooked a 200-pounder on it, and by sheer dumb luck, the fish swam the wrong way a couple of times. I got him after about an hour and a half, fairly near the boat, and then he didn't get landed. So that's just kind of the way it goes. But it proves that quality tackle, especially 2-speeds, where all your knots are properly tied, you've got a reel with the drag properly set, and it's a 2-speed. You can catch, not that I recommend this for 200-pounders, but that means if, quotation marks, air quotes, a 100-pounder bites this when you were expecting a 30-pounder, you got a good fighting chance of landing it. And I mean, Art, you saw a variety of different conditions with these dart type jigs last year. Anything you want to add on maybe color selection or a particular way to fish them that you saw that was really good?
Yeah, we have a question about best lures for bluefin tuna.
Well, this is for under 100 pounds. Well, we haven't gotten to the big bluefin yet. I hear you through the internet out there. This is for under 100 pounds. But you know what? What's wrong with a 50-pound bluefin? Wasn't that long ago where the 50-pound bluefin would have been the biggest one of the year.
Absolutely. I think that you've covered all the bases with those lures, Steve. I don't think I have much to add. I think that, you know, most of the bites are on the sink, I think, and so it's not a skip jig situation. It's more of, you know, you're running up on a boiling school of tuna, and you're casting that towards that school of tuna, and you know, we're coming on the PA and saying that they're, you know, directly under the boat and they're down, you know, 150 feet, and so you need to let that jig fall and sink to that depth, and hopefully you get a bite on the sink.
And we have a question about retrofitting, Steve. Are you okay with split rings or do you weld?
Oh, yes, I am okay with split rings as long as you use the owner split rings or some other brand that actually has the pound test written on the package. So you can go to, we won't mention any names, your large general discount stores where you can buy a bag of 20 split rings for $1. Don't get those. I use the owners, and generally these are all around 120-pound test split rings, quite a bit heavier than my line could even possibly be. And then I go to the ST66 treble hook, which is a heavier wire treble hook. and whatever size treble the lure comes with from the factory, whatever that is, they're different, I go up one size. So that, I think, is a 2.0 treble hook. This lure from the factory comes with a 1.0.
Aha.
It's 7.
Bigger hooks.
Bigger hook.
I have 2 questions. Why a treble hook over a single hook, and who makes that jig?
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's see if I can show this to the camera. I don't know if I can show this to the camera. This is a Williamson. That's way too small. The camera will not pick that up. Williamson, which is a division of Rapala lures, not Rapala. It's Rapala, and this is called the Gomame. I'm sure that means something, but I don't know what that means. But that's the name of it. And if you look that way, that's the secret right there. It's got a little bit of an S curve to it. And that has just been absolutely deadly, deadly. And so the question is, why treble hook and not a single hook? And sometimes I do use a single hook. As the fish get bigger, there's no doubt in my mind that the single hook holds them better. It just does. However, there's something about this style of jig, and I have experimented all over the place, and I will continue to experiment. For whatever reason, you get a lot more bites with a treble hook. Whether it looks more natural, whether it has a different action that the fish like better, I can't really say. But I always have a few of these with single hooks on them, because once the fish start to be over 100 pounds, treble hooks can be problematic. But I'd rather
Yeah,
get
the hook's too small, and generally you end up pulling the hook out.
Yeah, I would.
Or it straightens.
Well, they're not going to straighten the SD66, but they can still pull them out. But again, I would rather get 4 bites on that and maybe land 2, than get only 1 bite on that and land it. That's kind of the, and they just, this style of jig, maybe not some other ones, but on this style of jig, again, I proved it to myself, and other people have proved it to me with their success. You get more bites with the treble hook. Maybe someday somebody will explain why. To me, that's one of those why ask why type of deals. But I definitely fish them both ways, no doubt about it.
Go with what works.
Exactly. Go with what works. On any given day, the fish have the final vote, always. You guys out there are asking great questions. I love these.
And the manufacturer of the lure?
Manufacturer, that's just too small for the camera. See, well, Williamson is a division of Rapala lures. A lot of you think it's pronounced Rapala, but it's Rapala. And I'm sure they have a website that they sell them on. I'm sure that your local tackle shop can get them if they don't have them.
Wayne Koto helps us with gomame. It's small dried sardines.
Oh.
There you have it.
There you have it. How about that? You know what? No one of us knows more than all of us. Mm-hmm. That's great. I'm going to be stealing it. Sorry. small dry sardine? Okay. All right. So, gosh, this is great. How are we doing on time?
Great.
Next outfit
Or
Okay. All right.
Real quick, what rod did you have with that reel?
I have it on a 8-foot rod that is rated 25 to 60. So again, that 40-pound test is dead in the middle.
Can you compare what you were just describing to a Colt Sniper?
Yeah.
A Colt Sniper is a dart lure. Yeah, that's one of the other popular brands, but there's probably at least a dozen different brands. I've settled on this one because again, I like that S curve. It's really been good for me.
Some of them you can actually, you can manually bend them too. I've seen. Obviously these don't do that, but there are ones that are made of maybe a little bit softer lead, and that if it came straight, you could put your own little S in it and duplicate that.
Sure.
Our owner hooks are sharp.
Yeah, be careful. Okay. Now we're getting down to it. I know those of you who are out there, you've been sitting patiently going, when's he going to talk about tuna?
Well, it looks like a yellowtail outfit to me.
Well, the way I have it rigged, it is. This is rig number 4. This is your and those of you that converse with me online, this is what I call the 50, 60, 80 pound rig. And I've got this as a Penn Fathom 40 narrow 2-speed. And I've got this particular rod is only 6.5 feet long, but the rod can be as long as 8 feet. It's kind of depending on what you want. And I've got 500 yards of 80 pound test braid on the reel. That leaves room for about a 25 to maybe 50 yard top shot of whatever the captain tells you better be using that day. And sometimes he'll have a different opinion in the evening than he had in the morning. But this rig is very versatile. And again, it'll fish 50, it'll fish 60, it'll fish 80. I've got it rigged up here with a yo-yo jig for yellowtail. You could also use it with, with the mid-sized fall type jigs. This, I kind of like to say for tuna, this covers tuna from roughly 75 to 175 pounds. Now, up until a few years ago, that would have been as big as you could ever conceive of catching within 500 miles of San Diego. You just didn't need anything heavier than this. And things have changed, so we're getting to that. But this is also a very popular rig, and I definitely want Art to chime in on this. Especially last year, late in the season, that is 2020, late in the season, the tuna wanted a live sardine on what's called a sinker rig. And again, I apologize I didn't bring one. Art's done some good videos already of how to use a 4 to 12 ounce sinker and attach it to your line with a rubber band, so you can look at that old video.
We did that on the last Tackle Talk Live. Armando did that. And
but the tuna wanted that bait way down deep, anywhere from 120 to probably 300 feet down. And this was usually the rig that you used to present that to those. That's a quality size fish, 75 to 175 pounds. And what were the conditions that you noticed where that sinker rig was really the thing to use?
Well, frequently it was, at sunset or just after sunset, and right before sunrise, the sinker rig seemed to be working pretty well. And nose hook bait, and you're drifting on a school. Maybe, you stop the boat late in the day, or we saw a school, driving around before daylight, and those time periods seem to be the time that sinker rigs were working pretty well. And it's all about us finding a school that kind of sticks with us. We drift along for an extended period of time with fish underneath the boat, and they're at the depth that you're talking about, 150 to 300 feet. And you might think, well, okay, we're going to try flat falls, and nobody's getting any bites on flat fall lures at that time, and so somebody drops down with a sinker rig and they're on, and so then everybody gets swung over to sinker rigs, and that's how you end up landing the majority of your fish.
As I said, the fish always have the final boat. But this rig, and again, I've got this on a 6.5 foot rod, could be as long as an 8 footer. Generally, I'll look for something, if you're going to fish 50 and 60 and 80, that means like a rod that's rated 40 to 100. And besides the tuna with the sinker rig, this is also good for larger size tuna fly lining. It's great, as we have it rigged up here, for yo-yoing for yellowtail. And for that matter, if you get on one of those longer trips, like a 7-day trip, and you get down into the area where the wahoo are, this is the rig that you'll throw your wahoo bombs, your raider jigs, that kind of thing with. So this is definitely a don't leave the dock without it type of rig.
Certainly, and the other thing, we have those spring trips coming up in May and June, and sometimes kelp patty yellowtail. So if you brought this one outfit, if there's 75 to 125 bluefin tuna biting, this would be a multi-purpose outfit that would cover several bases. You could tie a yo-yo lure on if we were stopping on a kelp patty, and go a little bit deeper for yellowtail, and then later in the day, if we run across a school of tuna, you could use it for a sinker rig or for fly line, whichever they're biting at the time.
Yeah, this is definitely a don't leave the dock without a type of rig. And again, up until I think 2016, the biggest tuna you could ever expect to catch, even somewhat locally to San Diego, you could catch with this.
Certainly.
Now, since then, things have changed. Oh, but we have a question coming in.
What size fluoro or mono do you recommend on the live bait sinker rig?
Well, again, 50, 60, 80 depends on how big the fish are, the tuna, how well they're biting, and how big the bait is. So there's no exact, Art will tell you, oh, they're big, don't drop in anything less than 80. And that's good, but if you drop in 50-pound tests when Art told you to drop in 80, you'll regret it.
And a reel for kite fishing.
Oh, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. Jumping ahead.
We haven't gotten, you're jumping ahead. That's okay. All right. And, all right, put this over here.
I have a question. Do you change your treble hooks on irons as well?
For yo-yo and for yellowtail, no. Most of the time, Tatty and Salis and some, your standard lure companies have been making that type of yo-yo iron for yellowtail for 50 years. They have it pretty well down to a science, and in that kind of case, I don't change it. Sometimes when we're down on the longer trips and there's wahoo around, I will change. I'll use a pair of bolt cutters. I'll cut the treble hook off, and I'll put on an owner open eye sidewash hook for the wahoo. But most of the time, I'm catching wahoo these days on bombs or something else that already comes with that type of a hook. Every once in a while, I will still do it. But if you're just going to yo-yo for yellowtail, in almost all cases, if you have a name brand iron jig, the hooks are fine.
Do you have an opinion about color of fluorocarbon?
I was just thinking about that. There's a lot. We could really go off into the weeds on that one. I just use clear. I've tried a couple of different colors. The smoke, the light blue. There's a certain cult out there that loves pink. They love the light pink fluorocarbon. I can't actually say that I've noticed much of a difference. It's way more important that you have the right pound test. Just because it's invisible doesn't mean you can get away with using something too heavy. And once again, make sure that you're using the right size hook.
What about colored braid?
What about colored braid? Well, I'm going to let Art chime in on that one. Because that's, the dark greens and dark gray colored braids can be hard to see for the crew. Art, what do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, green is like a nightmare as far as braid is concerned, because it's very, very hard to untangle. And that's one thing about, the transition from fishing from straight mono into braid has taught us some patience because of the tangles that we get with braided line. So, white is what we see the majority of, and we don't, from time to time you see green or gray, but I think that white overall is the most popular, and I think that as far as manufacturers are concerned, that they've really got it down now. So strength or diameter, that sort of thing, I think it's personal preference and confidence. It's like fluorocarbon. It's personal preference and what you use, and if you're getting bites on clear, then you're going to continue to go out and purchase clear. If all you have is pink and you're getting bites on pink and you gain confidence in it, then the next time you go buy fluorocarbon, you're going to buy pink.
Because
Yeah.
if you have confidence in something,
Yeah.
or again, those of you that are out there, PFA, positive fish attitude, if you have confidence in your lure or your hook or whatever it is,
Yeah.
or just yourself, you're going to fish harder, you're going to pay more attention, you're going to stay at the rail, magically, you're going to catch more fish.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not because of the color of the fluorocarbon, it's because you had confidence.
Right, and as far as the color of the braid is concerned, I don't think that the color makes that much difference. Like I said, you can get braid from the same manufacturer, and they have green or they have white, and if you chose to buy green, well, that's what you have. I can just tell you that from our standpoint, when it's green or gray, you're going to take a lot longer getting out of the tangle, and you're going to end up probably losing quite a bit of your braid because it's just harder to untangle, and we end up cutting it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so anytime, the longer the fish stays in the water, the higher the percentage is that something will go wrong.
True.
You know, a shark will come along, or, you know, that knot that you thought was perfect, maybe it wasn't so perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so if it's taken the crewman twice as long to get you out of that tangle, something else may happen during that period.
Absolutely. And if you're in a tangle, then you're not fishing.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, all right.
I have one question before we move on.
Okay.
What is your go-to knot for mono to braid?
Mono to braid. I was going to get to that anyway, but there we go. I tie most of the time, well, almost, I would say almost all the time now. It's called the RP knot, or the John Collins knot. I'm sure Art's demonstrated it.
Mhm.
You can look on YouTube and find a lot of people that tie it.
Also,
I generally use 7 turns. Sometimes with a lighter line, like the 20-pound test, I use 8 turns. And then sort of my little trick, my little thing that's different than what everybody does is, and you're going to have to look at the video that shows how to do it, when you go through the final time with the tag end as you're about to finish the knot, you then come around and come through twice. That's my little extra tip. And yeah, that's what I use. And going back to that story that I told a little earlier about the 200-pounder I fought and lost on my 40-pound rig, I had my knot was absolutely as stressed as any knot could ever be, and
you were just,
it helped.
you were overmatched.
I was overmatched, and you know the
Caught
line
too
broke.
big a fish.
The line broke right at the fish just because it finally wore out. That's just the way it works.
Again, before you get started on that, hollow core versus solid braid. Recommendation?
Okay, yeah. For tying knots, those of you that know me know that I tend to like to change. Like if I don't get a bite in about 10 seconds, I'm change this, change that, longer top shot, shorter top shot, different hook, different lure, whatever. So I almost always tie knots. Solid ties way better. Also, when you're fly lining, solid doesn't pick up as much water and slow the bait down. However, when you're dealing with really big fish and you're dealing with basically 130-pound line and up, such as on the Kite rig, for whoever it was that asked about the Kite rig, splicing with the hollow is better. But for everything 100-pound test and down, I prefer the solid. Good question.
I agree with that. It's easier to tie, and it's, you know, I mean, you want to be in the game. So if you're taking a long time to put a top shot in your hollow core, then you're out of the game.
You're not fishing.
You're not fishing. You're tying a knot. So
Yeah, it doesn't matter when you're on the way out, but sure enough, you're going to have to re-rig in the middle of a bite when the fish are all around the boat. That's not the time to be wasting time.
but then that's the time that you have multiple outfits that are rigged the same, and so you don't have to re-rig. You just go grab another outfit. But then you're talking about bringing 10 rods instead of 5 rods.
Right. So, here we go. We saved this for last on purpose. Don't leave the dock without it. Before 2016, the California state record bluefin tuna was 240 pounds. And I think up to that point, there had only been maybe 4 or 5 tuna bluefin ever caught in California over 200 pounds. Ever. Since
2016?
2016.
Okay.
I'm talking about California waters.
Got it.
Since 2016, needless to say, it's gone up about 80 pounds a year, and it now stands at, I'm not sure if the people actually applied for the record, but I think it was in October or November of 2020, there was a 420 12 pounder, I believe it was, caught.
Mhm.
You know, in California waters, so they're out there. An outfit like this, and we're going to talk about some options, is don't leave the dock without it. I can't tell you how many people have emailed me and said, well, I'm looking for getting some gear. I'm not looking to go after 200 pounders. And I say, you know, the minute you're on a day and a half trip out of San Diego, you're in the water with 200 pounders, and you can't pick and choose who decides to bite your rib. You better be ready to land that fish of a lifetime. Now, it's another whole episode of Facebook Live to discuss why those two are here and how long they're going to be here. We don't know. So you better catch the biggest fish of your life while you can. The rod you just do not leave home without these days is your Penn International 16 VISX. I like to fill that one up. I get about 500 yards of 100-pound test braid on there. And then this one, occasionally I'll use this with live bait and a sinker rig, but about 90% of the time I'm using a big fall type jig. In the nighttime I'm going to use one that's glow in the dark. In the daytime I may use one that's partially glow in the dark, or even just blue and chrome. And these are a couple different brands. That's a Nomad, that's a Taddy, and our friend Joey Shimizu might be out there listening. So I want to make sure I show his lure. And then this is, again, from our friends at Williamson, aka Rapala. That is the Kensaki Jig, which is actually just hitting the market this week. And I've got a couple of different ways to rig them up. Sometimes I like to use a big single hook on the tail and two of the big heavy assist hooks off the nose. Sometimes I like two heavy assist hooks off the tail. Art, you have any particular opinion there?
No, I think that, you know, we've stressed that you need to change the factory hooks, but it looks to me like these things are coming with the right ones, with the right setup there. But I know that that's something that we've been doing in the past, is changing hooks because the hook isn't sufficient, or the line going from the hook to the split ring isn't sufficient. So,
Well, and I happen to know that split ring there, it's 210-pound test.
there you go.
Okay, that's an owner split ring, 210-pound test. I forget exactly what number
Yeah,
it is.
and you know, we've been seeing that, you know, you might as well have, you know, one that's 250 grams, or I think that's 300
That's
or something.
320.
320 grams, so heavier is better. That way, if it's a little windy, the boat is drifting faster, and so you're going to get down to the bite zone with a little bit heavier lure than if you use a 100 gram. You know, you may get there, and then as the boat's drifting, you're not going to stay in the bite zone very long. So heavier is better.
And you can see on all these, or maybe you can't see, these have got about 3 or 4 feet of at least 200-pound test, and as heavy as 300-pound test. It can be monofilament, it can be fluorocarbon, doesn't really matter.
No.
Because obviously if it's 300-pound test, they don't care what it looks like. That's more of an
Mono's cheaper.
abrasion against their teeth. That's what it's there for. And again, I've got a rod that's rated for 80 to 130-pound test. This is a 7-footer. I wouldn't use anything shorter than 6.5, and a few of the more daring and more athletic people will go as long as 7.5 on this. This is a rail rod, so it's got a nice, heavily padded foregrip, so you can lay that thing on the rail, put it up under your left armpit, and if you're old and frail like me, it is truly a godsend. You push that easy button, you put it into low, and I can catch big fish better than when I was 25 years old. It's truly amazing. And that 16 is the one you don't leave the dock without. I've gotten enough emails, especially last year as the fish got bigger and bigger, and 200-pounders weren't even exceptional anymore. A lot of boats are getting multiple 300-pounders on the same trip. And as we know, again, there was at least one 400-pounder caught. Now you're up to the 20 size reel. That's a heavy reel. That's hard for me to fish with. So what ends up happening, I have it all rigged up, but I'm not very motivated to use it. And so if I'm not using it, guess what happens? I'm gonna catch a fish with it. This reel, it's, considering the power that it has, it's light enough. I think it's 43 ounces, and I caught a 313 pounder on it. The reel did great. The old fisherman holding the reel did not do that great. But I landed it and didn't die. And so, again, I have a lot of confidence in this size reel. For those of you that feel like you just want the next step up, the 20 International is a great reel. You can look up the specs online and decide what you want to use. I see a question.
Would it work for jig fishing flat falls?
Well, yeah, that's what we're talking about. Probably 80 to 85% of the time, we're talking about the fall type jigs. There are situations where I will use this with a live sardine, or if we're lucky enough, with a sinker rig with a live sardine or live mackerel. Every once in a while, I remember a few bites on the searcher in the past where we were getting 100-pound tuna on 3-pound live squids. So all those kind of things, it would do all of those. But most of the time, especially what the bluefin tuna have been biting in California waters, not hundreds of miles into Mexico, you're talking about the jigs. Again, a full glow in the dark for the nighttime, and then for dusk, a lot of times I'll go with the tiger stripes, if you will, zebra stripes. Much more important than exactly what color it is, that you have a good heavy leader, minimum of 200-pound test, 300's better, and definitely make sure you've got super heavy hooks on there.
What size top shot?
What size top shot? Well, in this case, it's on top of the 100-pound braid. The top shot, and it's not very long. Actually, this one's been cut back a few times. I start out with 20 feet of a 130-pound test. After about 2 trips, it's down to about 8 feet.
Can you fish the big bluefin with a Fathom 40 with 100-pound braid?
Big is a very relative term. Okay, again, before 2000,
you can, I don't know,
you
your
can.
success rate may not be as.
Yeah, I get that email a lot because people, an International is not an inexpensive reel. Fathom 40 narrow is awesome for 75 to 175. If you hook one bigger than that when you land it, maybe. But that's the fish of your lifetime.
And then there's the Fathom 60 too, is an awesome reel. It's an awesome reel. If maybe your budget can't swing an International, the Fathom 60, we have several of those on board for loaner tackle for big bluefin, and they work. They're workhorses.
The Fathoms are just an amazing, amazing value. The engineering that went into those, it's the same engineering on these, but basically they're medium frame, these are heavy frame. We could get off on that tangent. And these are machined aluminum. The Fathoms are die-cast aluminum. Other than that, they're pretty close.
They're a great reel.
Steve, we're getting questions about slow pitch jigging for tuna.
Okay, I'm gonna put this, where's Callie? There she is. Before we started this, we recorded just a short little tidbit on slow pitch jigging. So it's whenever Callie decides she wants to post it up on the Searcher channel.
Good answer.
That's not my responsibility.
Stay tuned on Tackle Tip Live.
Do you ever soak chunk baits, and when is a good time to do that over fly lining a live bait?
Oh, yeah. I should have added, this is also a really good outfit. And when we go to Guadalupe, this is the rig that I use for chunk baits. I haven't been on a lot of good chunk bait bites in California waters. I'd like Art to weigh in on that one.
Yeah, it's not something that stands out as any one trip or a year where that was something that that was a key to getting a bite. I think it's incidental. I know that we at times we have steady chunks going over the side, and there are people that try it from time to time, but I think that the focus is on artificial lures and live bait, and so we don't really focus on chunking that often. But it certainly is something to try. I mean, you know, you're about change. If you're not getting a bite, you're changing your lure, you're changing your size hook, you're changing how long your top shot is, you're changing your presentation of your bait. Well, I mean, who's to say that throwing a chunk on and trying it when you're drifting isn't something that you could try? And just remember, chunks don't swim.
So if you feel like your chunk is swimming off, something ate it.
You got a bite, put it in gear.
Speaking of bait, can you describe what is meant by cured bait?
Well,
Cured
that's
bait,
an art.
yeah.
That's an art thing right there.
Well, we're really lucky. You know, that's what San Diego sport fishing is all about, is the live bait aspect that sets us apart from the rest of the world, really. And we're lucky to have Birmingham Bait Brothers that catches the bait for us. Well, cured bait is, the bait boat comes in on a Monday morning and puts the bait into our live bait receivers. And the guys that work on the receivers, they put a date that box got bait in it and what size it is. And then they color code that. And so if the searcher comes out on a 7-day trip on that same Monday, we're not going to get that bait that was caught that day. We're going to get bait that was caught 5 or 6 or 7 days ago. So it's curing, it gets put in the box on a Monday, and then when the searcher or any other boat that's going on a 3-day trip or longer, they come to the bait receivers, they're going to get bait that is the oldest that has been curing in a bait receiver for X amount of days. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but I'm going to say 80% of the time we're getting bait that's cured out. And there is, you know, with our bait capacity, and lots of boats have the same bait capacity or greater than what we have the ability to cure bait on the boat. So if we got the bait that was 5 days old and we used up part of it, we didn't use all of it, then we're going to take what's left over and we're going to segregate it and put it in one of our many tanks on the boat, and that is cured bait. And so we add to that constantly, so we always have this little nest egg of cured bait. So I guess it's kind of like wine, you know. I mean, wine ages in barrels, or whiskey ages in barrels. It's kind of like that. It's along that concept. It's been aged and it lives better, swims better, works better.
Now to answer that one other question, because I didn't bring one, best kite reel. So this is a 16, this is a 20. Just visualize a 50 VISX, how much, it's about the same amount bigger as these two are. So imagine the 50 VISX, and that's, you know, in the San Diego fleet, that's definitely become the kind of standard kite reel filled with a 130-pound braid. So again, we're talking about rigs that you don't leave home without. Again, specialty rigs like the slow pitch rig, the surface iron rig, the kite rig, which of course you'll pretty much be using the boats, etc. But the 5 that we just discussed, those you want to bring on your own. And again, it has happened time and time again. Whichever one you didn't bring is the one you wish you had.
How about rod size with a Penn 20 VSIX?
Okay, I'm assuming that you're going to be using, with the 20 VISX, 100-pound braid. You could use 130, it just doesn't hold as much. I would still use, I like 7-foot rods in this particular class. You could go as short as 6.5 or as long as 7.5. And so if you're going to be using 100 and 130-pound braid on it, then I would get a rod that's rated like 80 to 150, so that your line use is in the middle of the line rating of the rod. And that applies even if you're fishing for trout with 2-pound test. You want a rod that's rated 1 to 6. You always want, you don't want to fish the lower or the upper end of the line rating of the rod. They don't perform as well.
Can we hear a little bit more about the Penn Fathom 25 narrow, 6:1:1 gear ratio versus 4:8:1 gear ratio?
Okay, that's the Star Drag models, and again, back on Cali. We recorded a little short before we started this, that's more of a surface iron type of thing. There's two different speeds of the 25 narrow Star Drag. There's a 4.8:1 and a 6:1. If you're an old school surface iron angler and you're throwing the older style jigs like a 7X or a candy bar that were designed, or a Tatty 45 that were designed to be used with the old school reels from 50 years ago, then that 4.8:1 speed is what these jigs are made for. If you're using some of the newer jigs, then the 6:1 gear ratio is going to be more compatible with some of the newer designs that are out there. I can't really say which one's best because it depends on what jigs you like, and I've talked to anglers, very skilled anglers, and it really boils down to, well, I happen to know this guy always fishes with 7Xs, and that guy always fishes with DW1s. Well, this guy's gotten the 4.8:1, this guy's gotten the 6:1, and they're both as happy as can be. So there's no such thing as the exact answer, there's only the exact answer for you.
Stay tuned to Instagram and Facebook, and you'll see Steve's Tackle Tip Thursday.
Exactly. Stay tuned. Also, can you just do a brief rundown or recap of the 5 reels in case people missed it?
Okay, we're going to go in reverse order because I'm already holding this one. This is from the heaviest to the lightest. This is the Penn 16 VISX, and you use that with 100-pound braid, top shots from 80 to 130, and that's for the big tuna. And I know we all wish we could catch big tuna, but sometimes the big tuna don't want to be caught. Then the next one down is your Penn Fathom or Torque, 40 narrow 2-speed, could be used with 50, 60, or 80-pound top shots for everything from yo-yoing for yellowtail to wahoo bombs to sinker rigs for 150-pound tuna. That's a fun rig to fish with. Then your 40-pound rig, which in the days before giant tuna were commonplace, this was your workhorse rig. That's a 25 narrow 2-speed. And you can use this one with either the dart type jigs or fly lining for tuna up to 100 pounds. You can catch bigger ones if everything goes your way, but if they're over 100 pounds, you should be maybe looking back there at your 40 narrow.
Just to clarify, that would be a good reel for casting surface irons, poppers into foaming bluefin tuna?
Well, yes. If the bluefin are foamers and they're starting to get big, you do want to cast with the 2-speed. For regular sized tuna and yellowtail, the Star Drags cast better. Again, it's a trade-off. And we're going downward here.
2 more.
One of my, I don't want to knock the picture bill down. Then your 30-pound rig, that's your Penn Fathom. Where'd my other one go? Well, anyway, it's around here somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, that's your Penn Fathom 15 with 30-pound chest top shot. And that's for tuna any size up to about 75 pounds when they're finicky and only want to bite on 30-pound test. And obviously any smaller game fish, whether it be yellowtail or wahoo or dorado, etc., that we're using 30-pound chest of live bait. This is a real fun outfit. If albacore ever come back, we use this one a lot. Art hates it when I use the word albacore.
Just hope to get even with him one day.
Yeah, someday we'll get back to them. And then your finesse rig is now we're back to a Star Drag because it's all about castability. This is for 20 or 25-pound test, and that could be for tuna up to about 40 pounds. And any time that you've got school-sized tuna around the boat, maybe the bait is small and the fish are finicky, it's not easy to land a 35-pound or 40-pound tuna on this rig. 25-pounders are not too hard, but if it's the only way you can get a bite, you got to do what you got to do. So those are the 5. And kite rigs, surface iron rigs, trolling rigs, slow pitch rigs, popper rigs, all those are optional. And we've done little shorty videos on all those things. But these 5, you want them.
How about using a flying fish with a backpack setup on a UC Viper with a Penn International 20?
Well.
What?
Okay, I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
Okay.
You lost me there.
The life jacket rig, for those of you that don't know what that is a frozen flying fish, well, he's thawed out, with toothpicks that hold the wings out so that they're rigid, and then they take a half of a pool noodle and cut it in half so it's just like a half of a pool noodle, and they put it over the flying fish's back so it's like a life jacket. So now he floats, and you don't have to use a kite, you don't have to use a balloon, you just put him out there on the slide or just let him drift in the current, and now you're fishing with a flying fish without having to use it under a kite. That would be a great rig. A 20 International, even if a 300-pounder bites. How could we even talk about a 300-pounder biting as being an almost expected thing? Don't expect anything. The ocean does not give things up easily.
So that sort of rig is great for private boats, probably.
Yeah, I've seen a few people using them on party boats. You can either drop them back on the slide, or if you're in a long drift, you can drop them up off the bow and soak them out. It definitely does work. It's a little bit inconvenient. You got to plan ahead, and yeah, you know.
I'm sorry, I'm just seeing 25 people wanting a life jacket rig and 25 life jacket rigs
Well,
going out there.
let me give you totally off the hook. I'm letting you totally off the hook. You do not need to supply the flying fish or the life jacket rig or the International number 20.
Okay.
People are on their own to bring them along.
Oh boy.
I have one last question.
Okay.
Is Steve going to have a day and a half or a 2-day trip on the Searcher?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking into that. We've got the 3-day trip, which, if I'm not wrong, Celia, unfortunately, I think we're full.
But
Full.
Oh, okay, then go to, on Facebook, Penn Fishing University. Do not go to my personal Facebook page, unless you went to Culver City High School. Penn Fishing University, follow. I will be putting up as the different trips are scheduled, including the Northern California trips. They will be listed there.
Stay tuned.
A couple questions about the 300 to 400 Fathom low profiles.
Oh, well, it's too far over there for me to reach, but let's see, there it is. That one. There we go. We did a teaser with that one earlier too. That's the Fathom 400. The 300 I think is a little bit small to use on the Searcher. It's more of a private boat thing. But the 400 here, which will hold a 50-pound test prospect braid that'll hold 280 yards of 50, gives you pretty big fish with that. They cast beautifully. They have a phenomenal drag system, and they're just fun to fish with. I would say you could certainly catch a bigger tuna than 75 pounds, but on a practical basis, if they're much over 50 pounds, you might be wanting to look at a 2-speed reel or something like that. But for yellowtail, and certainly for all the other smaller fish like dorado, stuff like that, they are a ton of fun, and yeah, I like them. So by all means, but notice it wasn't part of the 5. This is what you call optional. Not one of the 5 that are don't leave home without them. You guys are asking great questions.
The giveaway again?
Oh, the giveaway, well, okay. Now, if you weren't nice to Callie or Celia
Or
Art, you're not going to win this.
Okay. Thank you from the Walking Encyclopedia of Fishing, Mr. Steve Carson. And your videographers are running out of battery.
Uh-oh, okay. Well,
There's more questions.
there's more questions. Here's what I would suggest you do. You can go to Penn Fishing University, and when I get home tonight, I'll log on there and I'll answer the ones that I can. You can also, when this goes up on YouTube, which will that be, I don't know, tomorrow or the next day, I'll also go over to that. I'll answer the questions there. I also have a forum on Bloody Decks called The World of Penn, And I will, again, once this is up on YouTube, I'll post it there too. Lots of ways.
Steve, that was awesome. That had to be one of our better Tackle Talk lives. Wow, what can I say? You're awesome, and you are the encyclopedia of fishing, and we're just lucky to be associated with you, and we're grateful that you come on the Searcher and you help us out, and we look forward to continuing that relationship, and hopefully one of the 2.5-day trips in the spring we'll get vaccinated.
Yeah,
And
vaccination.
that'll open the door for more trips with Steve Carson.
They're watching this in July. It's all a memory. It's all a memory.
That's it. Thank you, Steve.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.